What's up, everybody? Gene Wolf here with another Motivational Monday, and today we're going to be tackling something a little bit touchy, racism. And we're specifically going to be talking about this because of the trend that's going on right now on social media with a lot of people in an uproar with the NFL players taking a knee or staying in their locker room. And most of the people who tend to have a reflective point of view on the matter sometimes don't understand what's going on here, right? And so I'm going to share with you my upbringing and what I went through with racism, being a Native American, Native Canadian in North America, growing up in the school system in the urban area away from the reservation. And you're not gonna like what I have to share. And the reason why I'm gonna say this is because it's very traumatic. It's traumatic that what I went through. I never realized how traumatic it was because I thought it was normal. And a lot of people don't understand the stance on why people stand up against racism, because racism is both systemic and it is economical and it is conscious, and in our education systems it is very objective and selective as well, and it's alive today, and it's very alive today because there's just not enough people standing up for it, right? For equality and solidarity between, doesn't matter what color you are, but to stand together, right? So I'm going to be talking about my story a little bit here. Maybe it might touch home with you a little bit if you are non-ethnic. We're going to be talking about, my story here. So racism for me started when I was in second grade. And it actually happened from a lot of the Asians. So the Asians didn't like natives. And I started growing up with that through second grade all the way to seventh grade. I did a lot of school transferring because I moved to different areas in my city. I lived in the inner city, the east side, right? And so I lived in poverty. We were not rich. I didn't have very many clothes. Plus my mom was going through a lot of personal addiction issues as well, right? So growing up in elementary school, I started hanging out with a lot of Asians, and I never identified myself as indigenous, First Nations, or a native, right? I didn't really know what that was. And I did know what hate was towards my racial identification, but I never understood what it was to be an Aboriginal man, a First Nations indigenous proud man, right? And so I only knew the hatred side of it, and I became the person who hated my own kind growing up because all my friends hated my kind. And I'm actually part Asian too. So my dad is Indonesian and Chinese. And so I have that side inside of me. And I tend to, when I was younger, I focused on that side. I gave that side. I nurtured it, right? But coming into sixth grade, I went through some really severe racism every day. I was called the chug. Back in the day, a chug was a derogative term, much like nigga or, Nigger word, right? I don't want to say it because it is such a vulgar word, right? But it was the exact same thing. It had the exact same essence as that word that a lot of people used to use towards black folk. And it meant dirty, it meant alcoholic, it meant drug abuser, it meant poor, it meant, it meant everything that you would think it would mean in a racial derogative term towards somebody. So chug was what we were called. And a lot of my friends, it got really bad between sixth grade and seventh grade. All my friends started turning on me, and it was because I was a chug, right? It was because I was native. And I heard it every day. And I dealt with it, right? I dealt with it for a couple months, about a month, right? it was funny because all my friends were my friends one day, and the next they all hated me because I was Native, right? And so I went through that really traumatic experience until I stood up for myself, right? I said, call me Chug one more time and you see what happens, right? And so they did. And I said, we're going to fight after school. And this was a huge thing, right? It was actually me against like 20, 30 people. And that's how big our crew was. We had a huge crew. And there was mixed. There was white people and Asians, right? And so it was me versus everybody, right? And I fought the 3 toughest kids in our school at the exact same time. So the first fight was against Brad. He's a white kid. He's a big, thick white kid. And so I fought him after school, right after school. He came up to me. He's like, what's up? So I grabbed him by the head, pop, 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 and started kneeing him in the head. And then I let him go. And then we took it to the park where everybody used to hang out and stuff. And now it was me versus Mike Al, rest in peace. He was actually one of my best friends, and he turned on me as well. But so I fought him too as well, and I ended up fighting Brad and Mike at the exact same time, and I kicked both their asses, right? And then after, it was a lot of what happened was they all stopped calling me a Chug after that. None of them did ever again. And it actually, as time moved on, I went to high school, and the same scenario actually changed. Now a lot of the Asians are bigger, the crews are bigger, and still being called a Chug, right? But I started locking arms with some gangs and stuff, and eventually they kind of feared me after a while, right? One of the crazy, coming into high school, I still started going through the racism, dealing with it. Actually, from 6th grade up until 8th grade, there was actually a gang called the Chug Beating Squad. It's basically a bunch of Asians and white people who teamed up and went around, and much like the Ku Klux Klan, but another Asian white version joined together for the purpose of beating the shit out of Native people, my people like me. And I tell you, so like growing up during this time was one of the most difficult times of my life, and I say that because I still remember it. It doesn't kill me inside, but it helps me connect and relate with what's going on today, in relation to how people, they just don't understand what racism is and what type of hatred is going on. To have somebody hate you because of the color of your skin, because of your culture, because of your background, because of the way you look, because of your social status, because of where you live, because of what you wear. It's one of the most painful things you have to go through, because you can't identify with who you really are as a human being. You can't identify because people hate you for who you are. So who am I? And people will never understand, because they'll always have a judgmental attitude towards people when they take a knee during a national anthem, or stand in solidarity to stay in their locker room. They look past why they are doing it, and they look for another reason on what it's creating. In other words, some people will ignore the fact of racism exists, but they'll bring up another issue. In other words, they are not being patriotic. They are disrespecting the flag. They are disrespecting the United States of America. Much like All Lives Matter movement, which I'll explain right now, the Black Lives Matter movement is to target a specific issue that is going on, a systemic and collective issue that is going on inside of our cities, in which Black people, Native people, Hispanics and sometimes Chinese, I guess, and are being racially targeted and treated differently than non-ethnics, right? And so these people the ethnics were getting killed at alarming rates without justification. They justify it to protect the police officer in that it's okay to kill people because you have a badge, but it's not okay to save a life. And you can, it's shoot first, kill first, ask questions later. And there's plenty of arguments in which that you can say, oh, but there's a lot of white people being killed compared to black people. You can't compare it when it's compared to population, right? There's, using the American statistics, there's around 50, 60 million blacks. There's over 300 million Caucasian white people, right? If you look at the amount of people who are being killed to the amount of people who are being killed, the percentages in which somebody is more likely to be killed being black is greater than more likely to be killed than white based on population, right? And so when you also measure the statistics of, oh, but they're police officers, they're doing their duty, what did they do, you know what I mean? Let's measure the statistics in how many police officers there are. At the time when I first got, I think it was 2015 or 16, there was around 800,000 police officers, and there was only around 50 police officers killed in the line of duty from a citizen with a handgun, and there was close to 1,000 police officers who killed somebody with their gun. About 1,000, close to 1,000 to 1,200 citizens killed by police officers. So you're more likely to be killed by a police officer than a police officer is likely to be killed by a citizen. So the issue here that we have today is that a lot of people have these great lives, and they're very gung-ho about voicing their opinion, about being patriotic, and about talking about these things, but they ignore the real issues. They ignore racism. They ignore what's going on, and the reason why is because they don't want to. They don't want to ruin their pretty little lives, right? So I ask you, to put yourself in another person's shoes. Put yourself in an ethnic woman's shoes. Put yourself in a colored child's shoes in which they have to go through the systemic racism that goes on. So the All Lives movement was created out of spite of the Black Lives Matter movement, because basically they're using this movement, the Black Lives movement, as if it's where black people are pointing out that they are more important than other people, that somehow they're more important specifically than the collective. And the issue here, what was created out of the All Lives movement, is that all lives matter, not just Black Lives Matter. And clearly, yeah, they're right, but we're still not dealing with the problem that the police officers and the systemic issue that's going on, where black people are getting killed at alarming rates. So now we're kind of sidetracking from the point of the movement and creating this other movement out of spite of it, which takes away from the attention in which we still haven't dealt with. So the reason why a lot of Black Lives Movement people are in an uproar as well because of this movement is because you're still not dealing with the issues at hand here. So we create this movement, All Lives Matter. Great, all lives do matter, but we still haven't dealt with Black lives, which they don't matter in this case. They're not valued, basically. And so when it comes to like people taking a knee or taking a stand in activism in NFL, and eventually it's just going to go across all professional sports, we're not looking at people who are disrespecting or trying to say, to the flag or the United States of America. They're taking a stand. They're taking a political stand to make a political public statement. And the best, and what's happening is this: a lot of athletes, I don't care if there's some people who say, why are they doing this? I like to watch sports because this is my time away. It's about utilizing your platform to make change. Mahmoud Abdul Rauf he's a perfect example of somebody who utilized the platform to get out this message, right? And because of that, they blackballed him in the NBA. But it doesn't matter though. He didn't care, right? He would have loved to kept playing. But the point here is the message. So when it comes to this issue where people are saying, oh, they're being disrespectful to the flag. They're doing this, they're doing that. You're still sidetracking from the point of why they're doing it. There's a racial issue going on here. And instead of dealing with the racial issue, and instead of dealing with the whole point of it, you then go towards this other issue in which you're creating and manifesting and saying, oh, they're being disrespectful, but you're still not dealing with it. And this, to me, is what a lot of people do, is they don't deal with racism firsthand. They don't want it inside of their lives. They ignore it. They allow it to happen because they don't want it to twist up their pretty little lives. They don't want it to poison what's going on in this beautiful life they have. And I see this with a lot of leaders too in our internet marketing community. They have this opinion about what they have of things, and rightly so. They're entitled to their opinion, but they don't know the whole story. They don't understand it. They just have their opinion, which cannot be supported without the other side of the story. So I ask you, put yourself into somebody else's shoes before you start being opinionated and start trying to post these intelligent, educated responses and statements to people. Learn the whole story. Learn what it's like to be me growing up when I had to grow up with racism. Learn what it's like to have fear in your eyes, driving down a highway, have to worry about a white cop coming by, pulling you over and blowing your head off. This is real shit that's going on here. LeBron James even said it. He's like, my son's going to be driving a car, and he's scared to have his son drive a car because he's worried that some white cop's going to come and kill him. So this has nothing to do with black people, brown people, or Asian people, or anybody hating white people. It has to do with there's a problem going on in the system, and there's a problem that's going on with the system in which these people, these specific people, I don't know, they're kind of sociopathic, because who in their right mind shoots first instead of dealing with to extinguish the situation? They just want to kill. They just want to kill people, and they control the justice system that's going right now, and they're getting off. They're getting off on these charges. I mean, it's almost like a bullshit court cases where they just do it for the purpose of doing it, but they're all getting off, right? And so this is the issue here, and I think we need to wake up. I think we need to participate in educated discussions, and you need to put yourself in the shoes of somebody like myself, a black person, or somebody who has received severe traumatic racism growing up. And until we start coming together, it's not going to be dealt with until we stop, sidetracking the focus of what we need to deal with here. The bullshit crap that people go through. Oh, they're disrespecting the flag. All lives matter, or this. You know what I mean? We're not dealing with the issues. We're creating these other issues to sidetrack from the focus of what we need to deal with, and it's just going to keep happening until you guys wake up. So that's my video. Like, comment, subscribe. If you're on YouTube, if you're on Facebook, share it. And feel free to post your thoughts below. It's all good. I'm not gonna be mad if you say something or in response or in rebuttal. Just keep it constructive, and we can have friendly intellectual conversations about racism, about politics, about anything. Just keep the names out of there. Keep the names out your mouth, please.